This is Neil King for Random Acts of Cartooning. And this episode, I'm going to do some horror sketching. I have a big event coming up. But first... Okay, everyone. So the inspiration for this episode is My Favorite Thing is Monsters. And this is just a book that's been put out, I guess it's a few years now, not many. It's pretty recent. Emil Ferris, and just a spectacular book of what illustration work is and mixed media, and somebody who I almost think, she obviously loves comics, but it's kind of, to me, like an outsider kind of comic because of all the different styles. And it's just a spectacular page-to-page book of what you can do in the medium. She has lots of different influences herself. But it must have taken so much time to create this. And it's kind of like, you talk about things that are kind of like masterpieces. And the more I look at it, the more I just really love all the directions that she goes with this specific thing, and this girl's life, and just takes her time, renders in such a spectacular way, creates some really nice cartoony types of characters also. But you get a sense that from it, because of the blue lines of like a notebook, that it has so many autobiographical thoughts to it, and but is willing to try lots of things. And again, like pens and different types of colored pens and stuff, and super tight realism. And you just can go through this book. It's just this amazing thing. It'll go down as one of the great graphic novels of now. Here we are, the 21st century. So it's just something that I look at periodically and try to figure out who I am also as a storyteller. But she's using the form, but on almost every spread or page there's like this big money shot that you're like, it's so beautiful, and then but continues to tell her story. And it's just beautiful. Love the hatching. Love, everything's done by her, all the text. It all works. It's a beautiful thing if you can get a hold of it. But here it is. My favorite thing is monsters. All right, so as always, when I'm doing these types of sketches, I start off with it's about an 80-pound Bristol or watercolor for most people. So what I did first is I just laid in some major shapes for characters, all kind of horror inspired. So this is Morbius, and that's a Marvel character. I had the movie from him. And I draw him very differently probably every time I draw him. So as usual, I'll get in there and I'll just kind of get my pen and do all of the quick little thinner lines that go in. With these characters, some of them, like Frankenstein, and with Morbius, I tend not to draw like a regular nose. It's more that septum kind of thing, and that's all probably Bernie Wrightson and all those guys to do all that. It just makes it way more scary for a character. And I do like, that he's more of a corpse. That's how I always think of with Frankenstein also. So with him, I'm just trying to get in and just take a look at what I can do with him. For me, for these kind of characters, because I'm not doing some monthly book or some kind of thing where you have to keep them very consistent, for a sketch, especially a sketch that you would do in for a convention. You just should be able to let go with some of this stuff and see where it takes you. This is a unique kind of a sketch because I'm taking these, 4 different heads, and I'm just kind of showing you what I would do with these characters. So growing up, in 70s and 80s and all that stuff, they used to, they came out, and Marvel came out with some horror comics. And I consider myself like, I've shown before with some of the episodes, Mike Plug, and he did a bunch of the things, Ghost Rider, the Werewolf by Night one, and he did Frankenstein. He didn't do Morbius. But so when I'm drawing these things, I feel like I see that in me. Like I did love the films growing up, and the variations of them, and even the more modern ones where they're trying to do lots of different things. But it also comes back to that Wrightson, Frankenstein thing. So I do try to keep it within stuff and try not to overthink it. I don't want to overplan them. I want each sketch that I ever do to seem a little bit different than any other one that I've done, because I've done a lot of sketches. And I feel like if I keep them loose and allow myself just to see what's going to happen, if I was somebody who's buying a sketch off of me, you could be pretty sure that there's no exact same type of image that I've done that I'm using for sketches. So when you're doing horror stuff like this, and because everyone sees them differently, you really want to, for these sketches, to let them just become their own thing, and that wherever you're going with this, it has potential to look, a little bit different than somebody else who has done it. But all the inspiration is there, and from the movies or from the comics beforehand. But for when I draw like a werewolf like this, I draw them so different every time that I'm not even sure where I'm going to go with it. But in the back of my mind, to see that 1940s, Lon Chaney werewolf, but then I think of the Mike Plug werewolf in the 70s that he had done. So it's all there. And when you're using your pen like this, I'm just trying to get the main parts to it. It's almost like I am sketching still, like I'm just trying to find the character in there. And this is kind of where he goes, So if you start this way, if you're as loose as I am when I do these kind of sketches, you're just never sure where it's going to go. So I put, Ghost Rider in there too. There was a comic where they had all, like I think they had Man Thing in it also, but it was, I think, Morbius, Ghost Rider. It was the werewolf, and I think Frankenstein was it. I'm not positive, but I have to look it up. But it was a really cool cover, and the interior not so good, not as good. But you just wanted to see them together, and I was a young kid, and that's what comics are all about. And so many people got that, and I probably loved it at the time. It didn't bother me that it wasn't a great story. These were some of my favorite characters. So when I'm drawing Ghost Rider, I really do a different Ghost Rider almost every time. You can do a lot of things with that character. I love, such a simple idea, and if you're willing, you can go try to pull a lot out of him. So that's the main part here that we've got going. Okay, so I'm going to go in a little bit stronger with this pigment pen. It's like a marker, and it's a consistent line. So I'll go in and I'll try to just beef up some of the lighter parts that I feel like are too thin. But because I really do want the contrast, and I'm going to come in afterwards with my brush pen, which is, it's all contrast, light and thick lines, dry brush feel. So for this, it's important just to say, because you have so much control of a brush, like of a marker like this, I like to just reinforce some of the lines and, establish even with myself what I'm trying to do with the character. And as you can see, it's just little parts to it. I'm leaving a lot alone because I am going to go into this with a watercolor. And with that watercolor, I'll keep it in a limited color. I was going to do it like all reds, and see what comes out of it. So even with this Wolfman character, I don't want to overdo it with this thin line because I'm just going to be going after it with the brush pen anyway. But when you have this kind of control with the brush pen, it's thicker, so it's harder to control for fine details. But for this, that's why this is really a good pen for this kind of thing, and it's waterproof. And but for me, when I do these sketches, it's all really about texture anyway. So these under parts are important, but I'm just going to be attacking the image with a lot of textured brushes and dry brush, watercolor, like all that kind of stuff. So for me, this is just kind of laying it out, getting a nice feel, and then see where I can go with it. That's about all I'll do with that. Now here's the brush pen, that Pentel brush pen. And I bring this to all of the conventions that I go to. So the idea is with this, I'm so used to over the years, I used to just use a brush. But once these came out, it really, gives you a little more freedom from having to dip into the ink and all that kind of stuff. And it's supposed to be a sketch, and there are people who do just amazing stuff with fine line and all that kind of stuff, but it's really not what I do. And when I draw these kind of things, I really do just want on the bottom area just it to be a burst of line and have a lot of motion with it. Because again, once I get color on this thing, or if I was going to do this in some kind of a gray wash, there's a lot more to happen. But when I'm drawing these kind of things, I usually am just saying, okay, this is where the big contrast is happening. Maybe I'll block in a much darker area if I feel like there's not much going on, and see where I am with this. I don't usually draw four heads with each other here, but I thought this would be a nice little thing. You can see what I do with different characters, and see what the parts to it should be interesting to see for illustrators, because I've seen so many people work differently than I do. But the looseness of this is what's supposed to be the part for me. And hopefully when you put all these guys together, and I'll unite them by color and all that kind of stuff, that they kind of work together, because I'm not doing any figure work with this one. So you can see, like, the good thing about this is it has a pointed edge, but it's very strong and it's soft, so you can't put a lot of pressure on it. You got to be aware of doing too much. And yeah, so I do like just these kind of marks. And with the Wolfman character, because, usually it's all drama with that. I'm not even sure if I'll have ends of it, like to see the top of his head or stuff. Like, I'm trying to do a certain amount of it, but nothing too crazy. And because I have the Ghost Rider thing down here, I thought to bring all of them together, I'd have the flame kind of going behind and in front of the other characters around, just to have some kind of unifying graphic element to it. That's what's so great about that character. You can just do anything with those flames. It doesn't have to be just there. And then for me, I'm just trying to figure, where to edit and make all the rest of them seem like they should be near each other. It's fun. And I mean, if you haven't worked with a Pentel pen, like some people though, it's like that Jim Lee style, where it's all fine line. So it's a whole different experience. And I've seen so many great illustrations like that. I don't do that style. With this, it's all loose and movement. It's all about all that when you're doing it. And if you have a nice, especially when I'm doing a convention, some people just come up and they want to see certain characters together and all that. So, I'm kind of prepping for a couple big conventions. So that's what I'm kind of trying to put a few things together, see if anybody would be interested in these. Especially there's a horror convention I'm about to do. The Ghoultastic one, it's the Delco Horror Haven. It's a great name. Remember, everyone, I am a working cartoonist, so make sure that you're using the links to some of the different stuff that I am selling. These are convention sketches, and I will be doing, and I'm always doing conventions, so if you ever see me out there, or I also do commissions. But here's some of my adult books, graphic novels. I do kid stuff too. But take a look on my Amazon store, and these are all for sale. And like I say, I do a certain amount of commission work, so if you're interested in some of the things that I've been posting, it's all there. Support me. Like and subscribe, of course, as always. All right, so I've got most of the line work there. I might touch it up at the end, as I usually do. Can't help myself. But I'm going to go in because there's 4 of them. I'm just going to do a wash, a single value red wash, and I'll do light, medium, and dark with it. So a nice little monochromatic piece. And I think that tends to work really well with these types of characters. To me, the less that I add to try to make them, like the werewolf, to make him brown and all that kind of stuff. I've done many types of illustrations like that, but when you have these guys together, maybe that one less element being that they have all the same types of light, medium, and dark value, this kind of unifies the whole thing. And I'm hoping, as an illustration, I think it's effective to do limited color pieces. But because they're horror things, red is a good thing to do. I was going to do maybe a brown, which the sepia tone or something. That would look good too. They're all warm. So I go in there, and again, this is like an 80-pound. This is not a big-time watercolor paper where, so you got to be careful not to overdo any of the areas. And no matter what I do with the watercolor, that black line is controlling everything. It's got the strongest, it's hard to avoid, focusing on that line, even with these values. But I think that it really does add a lot of character to it to going in with a limited color. And I do it often. And I feel like the effects for what I'm doing really register when you see them with this just nice little wash that I would put with something like this. So when I go in, mostly this is a wet on dry watercolor. So sometimes at the beginning, I'm just laying in light values, knowing that I'm going to come back in over this sitting. And the whole sitting with the watercolor is probably all of about 10 minutes from start to end for that part. So these sketches all together, it probably took me about 20 minutes, 25 minutes tops for 4 separate characters. Like if this was one of these guys, I could usually do it in a 15, 20 minutes. And for me, I don't want to be doing a sketches like this. If this was a finished for some type of a cover or something like that, you should spend more time. But for me, I think my style, that if I did overdo it, like I would spend way more time, I think it would probably have some diminishing returns for that. I think that this is what I do, and there's a character to it. So I hope, I've sold a lot of sketches over a long time, and this is what people see when they come to my table, and hopefully they're drawn to the quality of of this type of a thing. I think that it gives it, instead of it seeming very stagnant, it looks like there's a lot going on. And I really do, I love drawing like this. I do a lot of digital stuff. So to be able to do something like this is, it's just a lot of fun. And everybody should, if you're an illustrator, to do this kind of work. Doesn't have to be monsters, but whatever you're doing is to keep it like this, is to kind of just go in there, light, medium, and dark, get it to a specific place, and just kind of finish it off. I'll go in with some black on top of these reds, but you can see, like, the paper, there's something nice to it, that it's breaking down a little bit, but you can see the levels of the lights and darks, and I think that there's a quality to that. I'm always looking for the contrast, though. You can see I'll put in some more pure of the red on top of this lighter value. Always looking for light, medium, and dark. And then once I get to that place, I'm also kind of getting textures. I love seeing that brush line in the backgrounds, or even with the characters, just loose. You can see around the wolfman's head. You can see a little white popping out, or on the Morbius face on his forehead. I like that slight gray, reddish value, and I'm not even aware of it most of the time until at the very end, and I'm like, I'm glad I didn't overdo it. But it's so easy to overdo this kind of stuff. So you want to control yourself, because it's so loose that you could lose everything if you overdo every single part. You really would just want to allow things to be there, allow the white areas to be there, and then allow those lightest areas to be there also. And there's always parts that I think to myself, hey, maybe I should have done a little more here, or should have done more there. Could I have drawn this mouth better or not? Or, like, what is it that I want from this image? Is always going through my head. But with this, the beauty of it is it's what happens. So I'm going in with a little of this black on top to get the ultimate contrast. So again, in the back of my mind, because I'm a designer, is I want to kind of have these guys somehow kind of work together. So by bringing this in, I'm working all the way around it and trying to bring each one of them up and have enough of the dark where it pushes some of the other stuff back. I like when I see some of that brush at the edges, like you see that little feel of a brush that that you know that it's done by hand. Because again, I think that no matter what I do digitally, I'll never get this feel. Maybe if I'm sure there's some guys who work in Photoshop that make this happen like this, but to me, this quality of of the watercolor and the ink, it's just what happens when you do things with traditional media. And even someone like myself, I don't consider myself realistic, So with this, it just enhances my work in a different way than the digital work that I have in my books and all that kind of stuff. So I'll always do, as long as I can, I'll always do conventions, because it just gives me a chance to show this other side of what I do. And I feel bad for people who are a little worried that they're not going to be fast enough or all that kind of stuff. Like, this is what it's about. And with your talent, you want to do as much variety as you can with it, so that you don't get too stagnant. But I do really enjoy this kind of work. And all I'm doing is just reacting to what I think I'm seeing, which I'm like, can these guys work better together? How do I get that flame to go from one to the other? I need some more, texture. See that nice? You get a little nice dry brush that goes in there. That's everything I'm looking at. So kind of wrapping this up at this point. It's almost all dry brush at this point. And again, you can see if I go much further, I could lose that Ghost Rider. So I have to, believe me, in my brain as I'm doing it, I'm like, I got to stay away from that. But there's something really nice about it. And, that the darkest dark can really pop stuff. So without doing this, it would have been a nice little watercolor. And if I'm not doing horror things or things that are supposed to be like this, it's a little different. But anyway, so there it is. Thanks for watching this episode. Tune in again. Like and subscribe. Random Acts of Cartooning.